Welcome aboard, folks, and thank you for joining in on this very, very important radio show today we have with a true American hero and his family legacy going back to the days of Abraham Lincoln. This family and the great men and women of his heritage have served this country with honor and dignity and great respect. Not many have the bio of our guest today, Senator Adlai Stevenson. The senator has been on my show before, and very honored to have him on again. He was a superstar hit then, and it will be a superstar hit today. I could go on with the senator's bio, folks, but it would take up the whole show. But I can tell you this: he is a friend of truth and justice and the American way. That might sound a little bit corny, but it's the truth. This American hero served his country in the United States military as a leatherneck, United States Marine Corps, Semper Fidelis. Semper Fidelis. It's a very proud saying in the Marine Corps. Always be faithful. This man has been faithful to his country. He's been faithful in serving his country when he got out of the military in public service. He changed Illinois history forever with his deeds as his, let's put it this way, kinfolk. And it is certainly a great honor to have the senator on again. And we'll talk about the USS Liberty. We'll talk about a lot of other things. And we also have another person that wants to talk to the senator, and we're going to bring him up pretty soon, Dr. Kamansky. But I wanted to please let the senator know that I just want to do a few things I have to do before we start the show. And one of the reasons I do the show in honor of the crew of the USS Liberty that were slaughtered June 8, 1967 by the State of Israel in a sneak attack to kill us all. They murdered 34 of my shipmates, wounded 174 others, including myself, and many of our shipmates have passed on since then from wounds, from alcoholism, from depression, from suicide, and just health problems brought on by an attack that our government called a mistaken identity, which is the total absurd lie. We were set up by the United States of America to be sunk by the government of Israel with the cooperation of the LBJ administration and, of course, Robert Strange McNamara, and also Senator John McCain's father, who was in charge of United States Forces Europe and went along with the cover-up. Folks, I can't tell you how hard it is to say to your friends and your family, and especially my sons that have served in the military in Afghanistan, and one of my sons was severely wounded, and he's still recovering physically and mentally. because he wanted to serve his country. And I told him, I says, son, you're going to be serving in another country, not the United States of America. That meant nothing to him. He went to war anyway, and he paid the price. So I just want you to let you know that all men that serve their country and all women do it for a reason, because they love this country. We adore this country, and I do. And that's why I want to get the truth out. And that's why I've been lucky enough to be on this radio station to get the truth out, to tell the truth about the USS Liberty, the lies, the secrets, the duplicity, calling back our jet aircraft to save our lives. And they never came to help us, folks. Our own government knew we were under attack by a foreign government. Of course they knew. They were part of it. They were part of it. And our guest today is one of the few men on this great God's given earth in the United States of America that I am so proud to have been born in and live in. This man knows exactly the truth, and he's one of our only persons, maybe one other, that wanted a congressional investigation where they say they have had 7 or 10 congressional investigations, which is a total lie. They've never had not one. But Senator Stevenson started one. He wanted one. He was the main guy. He's been ahead of so many different committees, ahead of his time. What he did for his state, what he did for his country, and he still loves his country. And I think that's why he's on this radio show today, and it's my great honor to have him on our show. And we'll get to the senator in just a moment. As I said, his bio is so long, I just couldn't go through it, but I'll tell you, folks, in Illinois' politics, Illinois' service of their country, in the 50 states that follow, there's no greater man than Senator Adlai Stevenson and his family that served our country in war and peace. I want to thank RBN, Real News, Real Talk, Real People, because you can't handle the truth, owned by John Statmiller, that gives me the honor to tell the truth about the USS Liberty and the slaughters by the government, the Zionist state of government, and the real truth of what happened and how our government left us out there to die. They say, United States serviceman, you will leave no men behind. Well, they left us behind. They left 294 souls behind to be murdered by the state of Israel and blame it on a foreign country, and that foreign country is Egypt, Cairo. Now, when the music comes on, we're going to go to a break. And when that break comes on, folks, remember your sponsors on RBN. They support this show. They support all shows on RBN. We're here to tell the truth. And, of course, go ahead, folks. We'll be right back. See you in a few minutes. Counts. Thank you very much for listening in. A very important show with a VIP guest that I honor deeply for his service in the United States Marine Corps and more than that, his service in the Congress of this great country we live in. How long it stays great, I don't know. I hope the things change, but I think the USS Liberty is the key to real change of America. And again, thank you, RBN, and thank you, Manny, for working the boards. Manny and I have worked together for many years on this great radio station. Thank you, Manny. You're a professional and a great guy. I also want to thank Kat Faber, our producer of Your Voice Counts, and her beautiful music. Without her, I couldn't do the radio show. She gets all the guests lined up and tries her very, very best to make sure everything is on time and perfect. And thank you, Kat. You're a very, very sweet and wonderful woman, and the crew of the USS Liberty adore you for that, and always will. Thank you very much. Also, my good friend Ron Kukl, that gave up his time today for other people to be on the line to talk to the senator, the great senator from the great state of Illinois. And we already have several callers. Commander David Lewis will be with us also. Commander Lewis was very lucky, very, very lucky to come out of the torpedo hole. He was almost killed, but God blessed his soul and his body, and he healed, and I know that we're going to talk to him. I also want to thank a very special mentor of mine, John Tedesco, a former intelligence officer and good friends with Dave Lewis. And if you go to tinyurl.com /USS Liberty, tinyurl.com /USS Liberty, you'll get the truth about the attack on our ship and what happened and how many great people have been on this radio show, and also the survivors and their stories. This show is not about Phil Tourney. It never has been. This show is about the crew of the USS Liberty and how we honor our shipmates. That's why I thank RBN so much for their great participation in giving the dead a voice. And I'm only their voice, and I do that with great honor and respect, and that's why we get so many great guests on our radio show. And Senator Adlai Stevenson is probably one of the most respected senators in the Congress and in this country that spoke out for the USS Liberty. And believe me, Senator, the crew of the USS Liberty adore you for that, and thank you. And I know it cost you dearly in your political life, but I think it was the right thing to do. And I think at this moment you would say, looking back, it was the right thing to do, to remember the crew of the USS Liberty and the real truth, because you were on the inside and we were on the outside. But my question to you, Senator, is how can this country be so overtaken by the Zionist state of Israel for 294 shipmates to be set up for murder by the government of the United States of America and the state of Israel, and our government covered up for it, and then they say they had 10 investigations along with the United States Navy. This can't be true. It sounds like fiction, but it's not. Please go ahead, Senator.
Well, first, Phil, thank you very much for the charitable comments about myself, and also for the opportunity to be on your patriotic program. By coincidence, I and my wife been in Israel in 1967. I think it was in July, and we trailed the Israeli troops into the West Bank and circumnavigating the Sea of Galilee into the Golan Heights of Syria. And this is the beginning of my education. We heard we saw evidence of what would later be called ethnic cleansing. And I went back many times to the region, and along the way discovered the USS Liberty. It was James Ennis, I think, who visited my office when I was in the Senate, and at that time also served as chairman of the Senate subcommittee on the collection and production of intelligence. As you know, Phil, as you know better than me, the Liberty was on a collection gathering mission. And so I suggested, after hearing from Ennis for the first time, that now we're in the mid-70s, about the Liberty and how it had been, hushed up, and suggested to my colleagues that it would be appropriate for our subcommittee, which had the oversight responsibilities, to conduct an investigation. And I had no support. I don't think there was much doubt about what had happened. In fact, later the Secretary of State would acknowledge, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff would acknowledge, as did the person who headed the Naval Court of Inquiry, that this was deliberate. The Israelis reconnoitered. You've probably mentioned this before, and you know better than me, but they reconnoitered for a long time. It was obvious that it was deliberate. Well, why didn't we respond? The election of 1968 was coming up. The Johnson administration apparently didn't want an issue. And why didn't my colleagues in the Senate respond? Well, I think it was the same reason. They were all outraged and indignant, but I don't think anybody wanted to raise the issue. They were all intimidated. And later, in a somewhat different context, when I did raise the issue, not just of the Liberty, but more specifically how to prevent terrorism, introducing the Comprehensive Anti-Terrorism Act of 1979 and another measure to distance the United States from the settlements policies of the new Likud, the government in Israel. I was concerned about its very aggressive settlements.
Senator, hang on. We got to go to another break. We're going to come right back and get with you. Again, thank you for being on Your Voice Counts on this great radio station. Real News, Real Talk, Real People, RBN, because you can't handle the truth. Support your sponsors, folks. We'll be right back. Don't miss a minute of this show. Thank you. Your Voice Counts. Real News, Real Talk, Real People, RBN, because you can't handle the truth. And folks, I had a little bit of hard time hearing the commercials, and it's too bad because they're so very important on this radio show. So hopefully we can get that rectified. But I wanted to. I have several more questions I wanted to ask, but I'm gonna yield my time to Commander Dave Lewis, one of the heroes aboard the USS Liberty. And our ship was two different crews. Commander Lewis had command of over 200 of the crew, And of course, the captain, he had the command ultimately of all the crew, but most of the people that worked on that ship were the communications technicians, the spies, which might add that almost took Commander Lewis's life that day, and did destroy 25 brave American sailors that stayed below decks as the torpedo hit the starboard side and blew them to bits. Commander Lewis, can you hear me, sir? Commander Lewis.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Welcome aboard to Your Voice Counts. Nice to hear your voice again, and I hope you could hear all the radio show. I know you have a slight hearing problem, as I do, and we've been talking to the great senator from Illinois. I know you called in for a reason, sir, so respectfully, I'll let you take over and ask the senator what you'd like, please.
I just want to point out that the senator very graciously assisted me in presenting information to the New Hampshire General Court to try to get the state of New Hampshire through my Legion post to investigate the Liberty. I was allowed 10 minutes. I was interrogated for 45 minutes. Everybody was amazed and enlightened by the report. 2 days later, I got the report. Sorry, we don't care to handle it. But I want to thank Senator Stevenson anyway for what he did for us.
Well, no, I thank you, sir. And what you've just said is typical. And I didn't quite finish my response to Phil's, earlier question. But after I failed to get the senators to investigate the attack on the Liberty, I did, after the Likud had come to power and began aggressively settling the West Bank and the Golan Heights, I did get the subcommittee to begin the first in-depth study of terrorism. And that lasted a whole year. And it concluded in 1979 with introduction of the Comprehensive Anti-Terrorism Act of that year, and also another measure to distance the United States from this fatal settlements policy of the U.S., which was defying not only its interests, but the United States and the UN. And I couldn't generate any interest. I was trying to prevent terrorism, predicting a 9/11. It's explicit. It's all part of the record. Well, I decided to leave the Senate, and running for governor of Illinois as a Democratic candidate in 1982, the so-called Israeli lobby came down hard. I actually won the election, but I lost it by one vote in our attempt to get a recount in the Illinois Supreme Court. That was cast by a Democrat who moved over and voted with the Republicans. His name was Seymour Simon, and he later confided to a friend that he had voted as he did to deny the people of Illinois their choice for governor because of my efforts to defend Israel. And, of course, that was not the way he looked at it. And that is the basic problem underlying your horrible experience as victims of the attack on the USS Liberty. Nobody will stand up. Now, I think Secretary Kerry, very belatedly, there are now some 500,000, more than that, Israeli settlers in East Jerusalem and in the West Bank. It may be too late to implement what the United States, the UN, and the world have always supported, namely a two-state solution along the 67 boundaries. But at least Kerry belatedly is trying, and I think that's it's not just the tragedy of the Liberty and its survivors, but it's the tragedy for Israel and the tragedy for the United States, all caused by politics, which, how do you put it lightly? It's corrupt. And it's been incapable of representing the interests of the United States, and I think of Israel, in that very volatile part of the world. And now you see what's happening. The Arab awakening and the instability on all sides of Israel. This might have been arrested if we'd been capable of representing our interests in Israel's earlier. But as happened to the victims of the attack on the USS Liberty, we haven't had the political capacity, the courage to be right.
David, Commander Lewis, respectfully, as I respect you dearly, a very outspoken, brave man that had to have his eyelids cut open, went through severe pain and burns, and he's still fighting for the truth about the USS Liberty, and I think Senator and Dave, the most disgusting thing about the attack, the severe, brutal attack on our ship, was we were set up by our own government to be murdered in the Mediterranean Sea, all for the state of Israel. And LBJ and McNamara and his cronies went along with it. And as far as 10 investigations or one investigation, never happened. The State Department, Department of the Navy, the United States government is lying about it. And Dave, thanks for calling in. I appreciate it. I wish you great health and prosperity. And we love you like a brother. And you were a great man aboard ship. Every man I've talked to has nothing but great praise for you, that worked for you, and loved you like a father. So God bless you for that, Dave. We have another caller on the line, Dr. Kamansky. Dr. Kamansky, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Please go ahead and ask the great senator what you would like to ask him, please.
Yes, sir. Senator Stevenson and Marine Stevenson, sir, I am Captain Kamansky, a Jewish-American veteran. I have a prepared statement, Senator. From the White House to Congress and beyond, I have asked a certain question with no good explanation, and I ask you, Senator Stevens, why there has never been a congressional investigation, the USS Liberty attack. It seems deja vu with these naysayers as it was October 25th, 1962, in one of the greatest speeches of all time when your father, UN ambassador, said to Soviet ambassadors in the Cuban Missile Crisis, and I quote, sir, I want to say to you, Mr. Zaram, that I have your talent for obfuscation, for distortion or confusing language, and for double talk. And I must confess to you that I'm glad that I do not. D.C. and Israel, as a Jew, I want to tell you, we have a problem at all levels in the truth for the USS Liberty justice. Why? Don Pageler and I have 14 FOIAs and now appeals at all levels of government intelligence, from the CIA to the NSA, and we are finding out why by declassification and appeal. Please keep in touch, Senator, for further appeals, both FOIAs and otherwise. Phil has our email address, and the government intelligence community is now handling and listening to these matters. What Don Pageler, my commanding officer in these matters, and I have found out over 5 years is quite amazing, sir. End of statement, sir and Senator.
Folks, we're going to go to a break, and then we're going to kind of wrap up this show. We got some time, but thank you, Doctor, for trying to get the truth out about the USS Liberty. It's very refreshing to all the crew. Thank you, and God bless you for that. Real News, Real Talk, Real People, RBN. We'll be right back, folks. God love you. See you in a minute. Your voice counts. We only got an hour show here. I'm gonna beg John Stadtmiller to get me on a 2-hour show because there's just so much about this story and the politics and skullduggery and so many different things to go into it. But Senator, we have a survivor, Ron, that he's on the air. But before I get to him at the end of the show, Senator, why would our government, the greatest, wonderful, loving government in the world that gives everything to everybody, set our wonderful, great ship, USS Liberty, to be sunk by a foreign government and blame it on the state of the government of Egypt? And there was nuclear weapons on the way to annihilate them. Why would our government set up their own men to be murdered in this type of fashion and blame it on an innocent country is beyond me. It's just, I just can't believe I was even part of it.
Well, Phil, first let me mention my own. I try to record American politics as my history, as my family knew it, going back 5 generations in my book. It's called The Black Book, and it's available as well as other information at my website, which is www.adlai3, that's number 3, adlai3.com. But to your question, and first I want to respond to that wonderful comment. This is not a Jewish issue. It's a survival issue for especially for Israel. Most Israelis, as far as I can make out, and probably most American Jews, support the two-state solution, nominally supported by the United States. It's the government of Israel, its Likud and its aggressive settlements policy, and its lobby in the United States, known as the lobby, which has become the problem. It doesn't represent the interests of the United States or of Israel or of most Jews, but it commands enormous influence in our politics, and I have discovered at all levels in our politics. Your question is, why? I think it gets back to our politics and to money. I'm not sure I remember, Phil, your question accurately, but across the board, the problem we face, it's not China, it's not Russia, it's not climate, it's us. It's our politics. And I use that. In my family, politics is, public service is the noblest and most of all professions, because there's more power for good and for evil in our politics and public service in government than in any other. And that's the basic problem. And why in 68? Politics. That was 67, of course, was the year of the attack, but 68, even back then when our politics was much better than it is today, I can only surmise that the president, and apparently the orders to recall those aircraft apparently came down from Washington, was dictated by political considerations. And that's just typical. We wouldn't rescue our own embattled crewmen on the USS Liberty for fear of creating a big political issue that would have adversely affected Harry Truman, the president. What other conceivable explanation is there? At bottom, whatever the issue, the real challenge in the United States is not the American people, whether they're Jewish or they're Protestant or whatever. It's a system that has been corrupted, and very largely by money. And the Israeli lobby is a big source of it, and I am witness.
Absolutely, your witness. That's why they stole the election from you, as being governor of the great state of Illinois, and your stance for the USS Liberty, I don't think, helped your political aspirations. And then to be overturned by one vote is almost ludicrous and unbelievable. But Senator, I have to bring on a great friend, Ron Kukl. He was a first-class petty officer in charge of body recovery and identification when we got into Malta, June the 14th, 1967. And I love this guy, and I know he wants to give his point of view and his kind words to you. And if this show gets cut off right away, I just want you to know, Senator, that the crew of the USS Liberty adore you and love you and always will, for your respect and honor and dignity to duty. And thank you very much, sir. Here comes on Ron Kukl.
Stevenson, and I remember the first time he came on the radio show, and I was thinking that I'd ask a couple other people, Congressman Pete McCluskey and Paul Finley, to come on, and they couldn't come on at the time. But I just wanted to say hello, and with Commander Lewis on today, I remember quite well that I conferred with him before I spoke at the Navy Ball at Goodfellow Air Force Base down in San Angelo, Texas. I think it was in 2003. And I talked to him a long time before I went down and spoke in front of the Navy, Army, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, Air Force, some pretty high-ranking officers there. I was pretty shaky that night. But when I got all done, we showed slides, plenty of slides about the ship. And we came to Commander Lewis and what he looked like after the paint had burned the side of his face, and I don't know what else had been done to him. He looked pretty bad. And a lot of people asked me after it was all over with, well, he's dead now, right? He couldn't have survived that. And they were just amazed that the man survived this thing, and I can still see the picture in my mind. I just want to wish the Senator just my best. I certainly can remember the first time we had him on, and I was saying, what can I say to Senator Adlai Stevenson to get him to come on the show? Well, I guess evidently some of the words were good enough, because he came on, and now he's on for the third time, and I'm just elated. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Ron. And Paul Finley and Pete McCluskey were great public servants, and they paid the price too. And I should have mentioned earlier that a big part of the problem is not just the politicians, it's also the media. It's as susceptible as the politicians are. You guys are different.
I think you're exactly right. We're very different because of the fact that everything has happened to us. The people that have stuck up for us, as yourself and many others, we are different because we have the facts on our side. There's never been an investigation, as they say, 7 investigations, 10 investigations. There was one, and that was done by Isaac Kidd and Ward Boston, which Ward Boston in his dying declaration said it was a scam. We were set up to be murdered by the state of Israel, and it was his heartfelt condolence that he went along with it. But
he was sworn to secrecy, and it was only on his deathbed that he couldn't bear it any longer and went public, as I recall it, by acknowledging that he had been ordered to keep the whole thing secret.
Absolutely, Senator. You've got it exactly right. And, you know, with your not just being a senator or a leatherneck, you're a great American. And I'll tell you what, we want to get you back on again. We always will. And to honor you and your family and your contribution to the United States of America is unblemished, and it is more than most people will ever give in 50 years of your life, and you've done it for centuries. God bless you and your family. God bless. Welcome aboard, folks, and thank you for joining in on this very good. I just want to do a few things I have to do before we start the show. And one of the reasons I do the show in honor of the crew of the USS Liberty that were slaughtered June 8, 1967 by the State of Israel in a sneak attack to kill us all. They murdered 34 of my shipmates, wounded 174 others, including myself, and many of our shipmates have passed on since then from wounds, from alcoholism, from depression, from suicide, and just health problems. Then, and it will be a superstar hit today. I could go on with the senator's bio, folks, but it would take up the whole show. But I can tell you this: he is a friend of truth and justice and the American way. That might sound a little bit corny, but it's the truth. This American hero served his country in the United States military as a leatherneck, the United States Marine Corps, Semper Fidelis. Semper Fidelis. It's a very proud saying in the Marine Corps. Always be faithful. This man has been faithful to his country. He's been faithful in serving his country when he got out of the military in public service. He changed Illinois history forever with his deeds as his, let's put it this way, kinfolk. And it is certainly a great honor to have the senator on again. And we'll talk about the USS Liberty. We'll talk about a lot of other things. And we also have another person that wants to talk to the senator, and we're going to bring him up pretty soon, Dr. Kamansky. But I wanted to please let the senator know, very important radio show today we have with a true American hero and his family legacy going back to the days of Abraham Lincoln. This family and the great men and women of his heritage have served this country with honor and dignity and great respect. Not many have the bio of our guest today, Senator Adlai Stevenson. The senator has been on my show before, and very honored to have him on again. He was a superstar